Hey Tony, hey Phil. Hey, Impact folks, are there more people in the waiting room? Okay, let's give it a couple of minutes. Tony, nice to see you. Thanks for tuning in as always. Appreciate it. And if folks don't know Tony, Executive Director of Transition Projects, Phil Dollar. Hi, Phil, longtime board member at Impact Northwest. Thanks for taking time to be here. We noticed in the past that folks roll on a little later than 12, like five or 10 after. So we'll give it a minute or two. Um, yeah. Well, I imagine your schedule is pretty full the next couple of weeks, Carmen, with one event after the other. Is there a K2 debate tonight I saw or something like that? Or
Yes, there's a
yeah,
debate tonight. There was one 2 years ago. Feels like 2 years ago.
yeah, I'm sure.
2 days ago, and then
Okay.
there's another one on OPB on Friday,
Nice.
and then a couple additional organizational ones
Yeah,
on Friday and Sunday.
yeah, yeah. We're getting down to a couple of weeks at this point.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
Well, I'm sure in a way that's a relief just to be have it over.
Oh yes, yeah. It's
Get
been
back
a
to,
long road.
yeah, I can only imagine the extra time that, of course you have a day job too, and then all the extra time that goes into campaigning. It seems a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hi, Debbie. Thanks for joining us. Well, why don't we just get rolling? I know we'll get some other people who join, and this session is being recorded, and we'll be posting this to social media. So other people I know will see it. I just want to thank everybody for being here. This is another in our series of 1 hour virtual Meet the Candidates. Really delighted today to have Portland City Commissioner Carmen Rubio with us, who's a candidate for mayor, of course. Welcome, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Um, if you don't know me, my name is Andy Nelson. I'm Executive Director of Impact Northwest, and we are hosting today's session with some help from our friends. There's several other nonprofit organizations that have teamed up with us. I don't know if you have a PowerPoint. We want to show the list of others who are part of this. That list includes, of course, transition projects, and we're happy to have Tony Bernal, Executive Director of Transition Projects, with us today. You can see the other organizations that have teamed up with us to do the Meet the Candidate series. I got to point out we're all 501(c)(3) nonprofits, which means that we do not or are not allowed by federal law to endorse any candidate. But we all feel that civic engagement and advocating for the communities that we work with is important, and that's why we're here. If you don't know Impact Northwest, we've been around since 1966. Our mission is to prevent homelessness. We do that in two main ways. One way is by working with people who are facing a financial or housing hardship and hopefully keep them housed. We're very successful at that. And we also work upstream, particularly with young people, to build some opportunities, some assets, and experiences that'll help build their resiliency over time. And we're happy to partner in our work that we do with the organizations that you see here. Uh, we're also interested in advocacy because we know that services alone aren't going to fix our housing crisis. It's up to policy that really works and is the wind at the back of the people that we work with. So we've become more involved in advocacy over the last couple of years. There's so many things to advocate for, but we wanted to pick a couple lanes that we felt like made the most sense for us. And that is housing plus services as a first alternative. And then secondly, really interested in reforming the way government contracts with nonprofits. The way I like to say that is I feel fortunate to live in a part of the world, part of the country where our public sector does take the social safety net seriously and invests in that. I think we all can agree that the way that that's happened is a bit antiquated and needs to be updated. And so we're excited about advocating for what that might look like. Yeah, so with that being said, a little bit of ground rules to go over, which are pretty straightforward. Obviously, as our core to our values, we treat everyone with respect. Please keep your microphone off unless you're speaking. And then probably better just to, it's a small group, but we'll get some more people here. If you want to raise your hand or put a question in chat, that'd be great. And this session is being recorded. It'll be viewed by dozens of people once it's posted on social media. Let's keep that in mind. So just briefly want to introduce Commissioner Rubio, and Commissioner you can have up to 20 minutes to make some comments or whatever feels comfortable to you. Certainly love to hear what you have to say. And I met Commissioner Rubio a good 20 years ago when she was involved in working for Mayor Tom Potter. Before that, had worked with Multnomah County Commissioner Serena Cruz, went on to establish and lead one of the region's most successful nonprofit organizations, now called Latino Network. Gosh, I remember the days when you started that and how much work you put into it. It's now an organization that we're proud to partner with, and it's wonderful to see how that's grown and evolved. I believe it was 2020, first elected to the Portland City Council, and been a candidate for mayor for last several months. And we're really glad to have you here and wanted to give you the floor. And again, you can have upwards of 20 minutes.
Great. Thank you, Andy. It's such an honor to be here today. And in particular, it's special for me because I know and appreciate deeply all of the work that your organizations do day in and day out on behalf of our community. And so I just stand in deep appreciation of that, and knowing that I see you, and I know, and just really am thankful that you are doing what you're doing and that you exist in our city. We're very lucky about that. And so for me, I will start off just a little bit of my background in case many of you don't know me. My name is Carmen Rubio, and I was born and raised in Oregon here. This is my home. And I come from a long line of really, engaged, community-minded family. And my parents and grandparents were from Mexico and then came over to this country as migrant farm workers. My dad and his parents, and then my mother's parents, from both Durango and also from Chihuahua, Mexico. My grandparents came up as bracero workers, and they used to seasonally come back and forth, and then eventually seasonally travel from the Southwest up into Northern California, and then make their way up to Western Washington County every year, picking every fruit and vegetable that you can think of before finally deciding to permanently stay in North Plains, Oregon area. And so now I have a few generations of my family in Washington County and also in Portland area. And my mom is one of 11, my dad's one of 6. So just gives you a kind of a little bit of an idea of how big my family is. And but really it's a blessing to have them so close and in my life. And so for me, growing up here, you know, went to University of Oregon, graduated there. That's where I first really got the civic engagement bug in a really serious way. I took my first Chicano studies class my freshman year of my first term, and it changed my life and really connected me to student activities and student organizations that were very similarly focused around uh, my community in particular, but among diverse communities on campus, and the need to work together to advocate and take care of our most marginalized community members, and at that time students, and also the surrounding community as well. So I've always had this interest in service and interest in advocacy, and that led me to once I was graduated and back up in Portland, as Andy mentioned, I worked for several different elected officials, from Serena Cruz, eventually to Tom Potter, who was mayor, and then ultimately to Commissioner Nick Fish. And following that time, I went to work for Latino Network and was there for 11 years. And over that time, I got a very deep understanding of the other side of the policy impact, or where lack of policy and policy gaps existed, and our work on community side to help close those gaps and help make government more responsive to our issues. And I had never expected to run for office, but when I finally decided to, it was really because a few things happened. One, it was after, just rounding out the 4 years under a very challenging and oppressive presidential tenure. And that tenure had, wreaked havoc on particularly the, immigrant and Latina community, and all immigrant communities and communities of color. It was a particularly hard time. And so I was feeling the need to do something more. And around that time, I reconnected with my mentor and friend, Commissioner Fish, who strongly urged me to consider running for office. And I never really thought it was for someone like me. I felt better on the and more suited on the community side. But together with his advice, he helped me see that this is exactly why we need more people with different kinds of lived experience and perspective, and bringing that important perspective where it hadn't existed before. So ultimately I ran, and here I am 4 years later, 4 years plus. Decided to throw my name into the ring to be considered for mayor of Portland. But really I got into this race not, really because I love this city, and I think back and I remember how much it's given me and my family and the opportunities as we made our lives here. And I really believe in our future, but I also have an honest recognition, having worked over the last several years here, and then also many, many years on the community side, an honest recognition of where we are and where our work still is. Because we know, and those of us who have been in this work for a long time, we know that the status quo cannot continue. It is unacceptable. And we have a lot of work to do yet to get our city moving in the direction that we need it to, where nobody is left behind. But here's the deal. We don't have to forget who we are to change things. We don't have to discard our values as a city and a community to change things. And right now, some people are running and exploiting the fear and the negativity. Also, in my opinion, at the expense sometimes of our most vulnerable community members. But when we lean into our values as Portlanders and people of conscience, I know, and I've seen, as I suspect you have too, or you have done, we make these amazing things happen. And it's how we do it here. And that's why more than ever, I truly believe that we need to believe in our best days ahead, that they're still ahead of us, and that we can still get to that place. And that's why for me, it's really important that we focus in this really important, critical, pivotal moment, this pivotal time that we're at. We need to focus on our fundamentals. Everyone deserves to feel safe in our city, no matter who you are, what part of the community you live in, whether you're housed or unhoused, what language you speak or who you love. We all deserve to have that sense of safety and security, no matter where we're at. And everyone in our city should also be able to afford to find, to afford to live, and also have an affordable place to live, to have a place to live, period. And also everybody in our city should be confident that their leaders are working together to tackle homelessness issues, drug addiction, our economy, livability issues, the housing shortage, all these things. We need to have confidence. People deserve, you deserve to know that our leaders are actually productive together. That when they are together, they are thinking about our most pressing challenges and doing everything they can for the good of every single resident in this city. We cannot afford to wait anymore or lose any more years waiting for someone new to learn the ropes, or we cannot lose any more time while people stand and point fingers at each other instead of solving problems. We need our leadership to hit the ground running now. And I believe that no one in this race is more qualified and capable and ready for this moment, given my experience, than I am. I can also tell you what I believe we don't need. We don't need any more drama. We don't need any more division. We don't need any more antics. We just need accountable and competent leaders. Leaders who know how to work together, how to build coalitions with community and across sectors, and leaders who have the guts to make tough choices and get things done. So in other words, we need grown-ups in the room. And you can learn a lot about what candidates will do for you in the future, about looking, if they've been in office, about what they've done already. And I think that's a very, very important thing. It shows you how they work with people. It shows you how they can navigate, how they can build if they can build a coalition, or how you can build momentum to get what you need to get done on behalf of community. So for those reasons, I really encourage you to take a look at all of our records, take a look at what we've done in the short time that we've been there, because that'll give you a good sense of how we use our time, who we engage with in that time, and what things are priorities for us that we've gotten done in that time. And I'm extremely proud of my record. In the short time that I've been in office, I passed numerous pieces of legislation aimed at catalyzing housing development and housing production, including incentives for low-income home ownership, affordable housing development, and also innovative ideas like incentives for office to housing conversions. I was also really pivotal in getting the city and the police union to finally agree on body-worn cameras, something that took years to finally negotiate out. When we sat at the table, we helped to get it done. Also, we had took a leadership role in helping to reform some of the Portland Clean Energy Fund parameters, and which is now making millions of transformative investments into our local economy and also reducing carbon. And also, I'm the strongest consistent voice on council for the funding and political stability of Portland street response, something that needed to be stabilized a long time ago. Also, I've created the first ever Office of Small Business, which we've never had in the city of our size, and then ended decades of dysfunction by consolidated our fragmented permitting services into one team and one authority. So those are just examples of things that I've done in the time that I've been here. That's why I feel that none of my competitors have been able to achieve even close to what, some of the things we've talked about that are complex, that require multiple relationships, high stakes conversation, negotiation. They have not been able to do that in the same amount of time. And in this time of transition, we need those kinds of leaders at the table. So what this means as mayor, I will focus on lasting solutions and make sure that our city does reflect our values and we don't lose that, while at the same time holding the line when it comes to being an accountable city government to our residents, to you. And as I mentioned before, we're at a very pivotal moment where we get to define who we want to be for the next generation. We just voted to change our entire form of government. This is a incredible once in a lifetime opportunity, and we have to get it right. We cannot regress and create more chaos and disruption, and particularly in our safety net services. And I'll be frank, I have shown time and again the ability to lead while also producing policy wins for our city. And this is the biggest single difference between myself and my competitors, is that I have the ability to work with people to get hard things done, and when needed, to call the question. And we need those leaders that are willing to sit down together at the table and not, be in that place where you refuse to meet with people who disagree, or you don't take the time to actually find the common ground, because it isn't about us as leaders. It's about us having the honor of this office to work on behalf of community to solve problems. And I feel that people forget that sometimes, and we need to remember that and hold that at the very center of what we do. We need leaders who will bring us together to realize our vision for Portland as a livable city, affordable city, a safe city for everyone at every stage of life, where our small business community is thriving in all parts of our neighborhoods, and where there is ample housing affordable for everyone, and where homelessness is rare and it's brief. And we also take care of our vulnerable. And a Portland with a downtown that is bustling with more residential life, with social life and activity and activations for all income levels, and where our arts and our food scene is very active, and we're able to sustain our economy here, and we take care and great pride in our environments and our home along these two beautiful rivers and in the shadow of the Cascade Ridge. So I do believe that our fundamentals are there, and we can make them even stronger, because I believe in us as a community when we come together. So this is what I hope to do, and this is what inspires me when I think about working together with you and on behalf of community to build our future Portland together. And I would be honored to earn your support. So I'll stop right there.
Thanks so much, Commissioner. That's great to hear so succinctly your messages, and thanks for staying within 20 minutes too. We wanted to just spend some time now and invite anyone to either raise their hand or put a question in the chat, and it's a small group. Let's have a conversation here and talk about the issues that are most relevant. And maybe I can just kick it off. I mentioned before that impact while there's many things we're excited about, we've kind of picked a couple of lanes with our advocacy. And the first one is really about, the best solutions to this housing crisis. It took us 20 years to get here. I don't think we're expecting to pull out of this overnight. We're suspect to any short-term solutions for that. But we have been studying what's worked and what's been best. And for the third year in a row, this year, we produced a homelessness prevention strategy that's based on sort of best practices, the data. We're inspired by books like this that really take a smart look at what's there. And we're looking, we've been here for almost 60 years, and we'll be here for another 60. So we're taking a real long-term approach to this and long-term vision. Anyway, what we've realized is that really the preferred intervention is housing plus services. We
Mhm.
understand there's a role for shelter, and we understand there's a role for safe rest villages. That doesn't really solve our issue. We need to find a way, and you referenced it, to bring more units online. Um, Things like long-term rent assistance plus case management. Anyway, just love to hear your thoughts on strategies. What do you see is working? What's promising? Just overall your approach.
Thank you. Yes, everything you mentioned are things that I firmly support and believe in as well. At the crux of a lot of our challenges lies the housing crisis that has been here for many decades. And as we all know, it took decades to create. And it's something we continue to struggle with. And now we're seeing the very real manifestations and impacts and other corollary issues that go along with lack of affordable and available housing. And so, as someone who's been a housing commissioner just for a very short time, a year and a half, in that very short time, I've worked really hard to turn over every stone and move every single lever at the city site on the city level to see what we can do within our role and our authority, and what things we can leverage or influence to that effect as well. Because clearly there's an interplay that's very strong between housing and houselessness. And for me, at the point that we are at, I believe that we need all of it on the table right now. So we do need shelters with services, specific kinds of shelters with services that have been proven that have some promise. Uh, but we need it doesn't work if we don't have housing on that continuum. It must be a solid continuum of available affordable housing. So, and we are already behind. For the city of Portland, you probably all know this better than I do, but if we're going to meet the goals set up by the governor, we're going to have to be on track to produce 120,000 units of housing over the next 10 years. We're not even keeping pace right now. And so looking at that goal and looking at the dip in development that's occurring right now, I'm focusing on things like permitting and how do we optimize and clear up the permit backlog? How do we make it more streamlined? How do we incent more affordable housing development? How can we cut through more red tape and do code cleanup so there is more incentive for people, and there is more, or for projects to come through. And there are ways that we can do around the edges or leverage together with the state to make sure that we're building housing less expensive and easier. One of the things that that's coming online very soon too is that we have 6 new TIF districts that are coming online later this month. Actually, I think it's next week. Maybe they're going to be coming before council, and we're going to be hopefully adopting those 6 new TIF districts, which they will not produce, funds overnight, but within 2 years, we will start accruing enough funds to hopefully start reinvesting in our housing. And as you know too, 45% of those funds across all TIF districts right now are earmarked for affordable housing. And I will tell you that it's a critical time because we right now have candidates and some of my colleagues who are very interested in removing that designation. They want to remove that 45% for affordable housing and make all eligible housing and make it eligible for market rate housing. So we have to, we're in a place where it's no longer we're trying to fight for more. We're in a place of protection and preservation right now, and those things are at stake. So it's a time for us to really show up and do what we can to hold on to the ground that we've gained, but also continue to really push further. And we need leaders in those positions who get it and who understand that and are not going to take the eye off the ball. We also have new catalytic developments that are coming online too for housing around, OMSI and Broadway corridor that promise a lot more affordable housing as well. So we do have some bright spots, but it really matters what perspective and what orientation that you're bringing into that housing portfolio. Where is your focus going to be? And for me, it is clearly making sure that we leave no one behind, because that, again, hits squarely at our problem around houselessness.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that. I've got a number of questions that have popped up in the chat. In addition, if folks want to just raise their hand, we can also you can also ask your question out loud. But looking at the chat, there was a pre-submitted question from Carol, kind of a two-parter. The first was asking about what you've done to address homelessness and how you address it as mayor. I think you just answered that, but for sure, please elaborate. There's specifically talking about tent distribution, policy around that. And I think the question is, how will you ensure that resources like tents are distributed effectively? So I'd love to give you a chance to respond there.
So the first one is about what I've done, and then about tent.
Yeah, the first part of the question is, and I'll read it: what have you done to address homelessness, and how will you address it as a mayor? And then the second part is about how will you ensure that resources like tents are distributed effectively?
Okay. So I will just sort of recap the homelessness portion. So in terms of homelessness, my position is that, we've heard people that have, quick ideas or shortcuts. I don't believe there are shortcuts. There are no band-aids. I have worked in local government and worked in community long enough to know that you need to build systems that work. And when you build systems that work, it means going to root causes. It means going to root structural issues that need to be addressed and addressing those things. To me, it's not rocket science. So I really believe that we need to build out a true, streets to housing continuum. And that, involves making sure that all the pieces, all the systems that touch any individual are available. There's easy onboarding at any point, that it's responsive to any kind of need. But that at the end of that, but the ultimate goal is to have someone held and healthy and access to wraparound services that need them. Whether that's, that someone just needs some support, and then, just that extra help, but have helped to find a place to live and to get housed, or if they're going to need long-term support and permanent supportive housing with wraparound services, or if they're going to need transitional living spaces so that they can access mental health supports or addiction or treatment, whatever the need is, we need to make sure as government partners, all of us in multiple jurisdictions, that we have our stuff together, that we're working together, and that there is seamless handoff from one thing to the next, because it should be an experience that is not re-traumatizing to anybody to go through. And we have seen through the stress test of the pandemic that all our systems were not in alignment, that we did have work to do at a systemic level, that governments had work to do at that level. And so the wheels are now turning. Doesn't mean we all agree at all parts and pieces of that, but there is the shared goal and desire to have a system that works, at least by most of us. And so that's my approach. We have to build a system that works for everybody, no matter how hard or painful it might be, we have to put truth on the table, and we have to stay there because we're elected to do that. We don't get to walk away. It is a privileged position to get to walk away from that problem. And quite honestly, it makes me angry when when that's the outcome. We need to do that because this quite literally means lives. And in terms of the tarps and tents, uh, tent bans to me are not a solution. I personally think it's a ridiculous and false choice. It's a tent ban in isolation does nothing, and you're only, I mean, in terms of, you know, having the availability of life-saving things like tents during extreme weather, I think is a life or death situation, and those things are needed for those reasons. Do I think that maybe the city or the county could be more organized and track things better? Sure, that's fine. I don't, that's a more of a, uh, you know, a programmatic organizational issue or tracking issue, fine. But to reduce the issue just to a single item, like about tents and the discomfort of the visibility of tents, grossly mischaracterizes the problem and is not getting to the root issue, in my opinion.
Thank you. Appreciate that answer. Got a couple hands up, and then we've got a couple of questions in the chat. I'm going to ask Andy Miller from RJ's Future to jump in on the conversation.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Rubio. It's good to see you. So I want to really agree with you about the need to build a system. And I think as someone who's been working as a provider now, I feel like we've passed a lot of funding measures. As individual providers, many people on this call would say they see a lot of success every day. We see a lot of people moving from homelessness into housing. But what we have yet to do is actually bring those funding sources into alignment around an individual, systemic approach to homelessness, which is really a systemic issue that we're solving instead at a very individual level, one by one. And then within that, I think recent history is telling us our governmental funders are less and less aligned. So witness this morning's headlines about the city's, or at least 3 commissioners' threat to withdraw from the Joint Office of Homeless Services. So, and we're doing things like, even our organization, we're building affordable housing, moving folks into it who actually can't afford the rents, even though they're quote unquote affordable. And the system, there's no system to respond to that. So we're seeing rising eviction rates from affordable housing, which is supposed to be the gold standard of permanent solutions. So my question is, given sort of some of the fracturing of political alignment, and a brand new commission at the city that's going to have 12 commissioners from all different places and walks of life. I'm just wondering what you think you bring to helping heal some of that fracturing and build that system.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Andy. I have so much to say about what just happened. I'm incredibly disappointed in my colleagues. I will say that. More than ever, it's almost like more than ever, we need to be doubling down on our commitment to finding those shared and common ground agreements with the county. And we've been closer than we ever have before. And so that's why I'm so greatly disappointed that just 3 months into our new agreements, just 3 months, that that there's been this recent move by 3 of my colleagues. So we're not even giving that agreement or the new reset that we've done any time or runway see how this could produce better outcomes for all of us, and how this could produce more alignment than ever. And we're more aligned than ever, and we still have work to do. But this is precisely the worst possible moment to do it. And so what I would bring is a complete departure from that line of thinking. As I vocalized yesterday, I believe it's time to stay the course more than ever. That we can find common ground, that we owe it to people that we serve to do that. As I mentioned in my opening, it is a privilege to be in these positions, to be trusted enough to problem solve on behalf of community, and that's what we should be doing right now. And I'm not going to give up any hope about that either. I am hoping that the right thing will prevail, and this work will continue. I have faith that voters will elect the right folks, and that voters will pick folks who know how to problem solve and are interested in collaboration and working together to make all of our systems work. I've been very, very impressed with the caliber of a lot of the candidates for city council. And ultimately, even if this council gets things moving in that direction, ultimately, part of that decision will reside with the next council. There are different pieces in place that have time constraints or time requirements at each step of the way to withdraw from the IGA with the county. And if we play that out and work that backward, it would fall into the next council, or at least for some part of it. So my hope is that there will be some ability to get things on track. But they haven't filed anything yet, so anything can still happen.
Yeah, I appreciate that dialogue. I think that's a really important topic that we're all really interested in. Ada, thank you for raising your hand. Wanted to invite you to be part of the conversation too.
Thank you. Thanks, Commissioner Rubio, again for being here and taking the time. I really liked in your opening comments around wanting to find lasting solutions to address the housing and homelessness crisis. And Andy mentioned this a little bit too as he was opening up and speaking about Impact Northwest efforts around advocacy. So I wanted to ask you what you think about this and how you can help on it. Is one of those lasting solutions for us is really reforming the way that government contracts with the nonprofit sector, especially around paying nonprofit workers a housing wage. I'm sure you know a little bit about this, being a former AD of a nonprofit and care deeply about it. So yeah, I'm wondering what you think about it and what you would do to help us if elected as mayor.
I understand this issue very deeply. I was very involved initially, and then I transitioned off, but I remain very committed to this. I do not think that there is a deep understanding of just how transformative changes would be in helping not only with workforce issues, but also cash flow issues, all the things that we need to be online and ready at any moment's notice, because you are the safety nets. There is nothing else after this. I mean, you're doing the job that government can't do. And so for those reasons, yes, I would be fully supportive of the issues that you raised.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thanks for the question, Ada. Similar question in the chat from RJ Stangman. Who was that? Impact. RJ, do you want to unmute, or would you want me to read that question for you? You might be multitasking. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can read it, Andy. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carmen Rubio, for stepping up here today. My question is, as of July 2024, 53% of households in Portland are owner-occupied, while 47% are renter-occupied. Could you describe your experiences being either a Portland renter or a Portland homeowner, if applicable? It seems like only those in the executive level positions within nonprofits have the salaries to be able to be a homeowner in Portland, while direct service providers are living paycheck to paycheck as rents and costs of living keep climbing. How can you assure that those still renting will have the opportunities to become homeowners in Portland? Thank you.
Thanks. That's a great question. I am a homeowner. I've been a homeowner since I would say 2008 or 9. And I know that even back then, where I bought my first house, it felt very expensive, but I cannot even fathom now, being the age I was purchasing a house today, it would just be so much more unaffordable and almost impossible. And I strongly believe in government incentives, not just around affordable housing, but also affordable home ownership. When I ran Latino Network, increasingly over the 11 years that I was there, we were seeing the trend of folks who worked for Latino Network they increasingly just could not even live in Portland at all. Or if they did, they had to double or triple up, and they were, workers who didn't have, the needs of any extended family, so they could do that. But for those members that had families or had extended family obligations, it was just virtually impossible. So they ended up driving sometimes for an hour or more out from, Hillsborough or Woodburn or Troutdale to come into the city and work for very, lower wages. And so I'm very interested and committed to ensuring that our workforce, back to the wages question, and making sure that we are paying and that we are a city and a community that values the work that people do and values the kinds of work that people do. But also that we do whatever we can to be innovative about how we create housing that is affordable to all levels, workforce housing, folks that are in this community, that we have, stronger fair housing laws in Portland, that we have more tenant protections, that we, make sure that folks living with disabilities have access, to places that have space for them, that there are family size units for folks that have, today's sizes of families and today's kinds of families. I'd also want to look at ways that we can incentivize or create. I don't have a deep idea about this, but I've heard about this from other policymakers from different states about how do we incent opportunities where if homeowners are going to sell, if they're selling to tenants first, how do we incent opportunities like that? And then also, I guess the last thing I will say is, like, we need more density. And I am someone that deeply believes in density as a means of bringing, the pricing back down again and to be more affordable and attainable for everyone. A greater supply of housing across all parts of the city reduces, the hold that owners have over setting rents. So making sure that we have ample housing, I think, is really important. And part of that is why I support density and why I support one of the campaigns that's happening right now, led by Portland Neighbors Welcome, which is East Side for All campaign. So we need multiple tools and multiple things at the same time. And we can't take our eye off the ball, especially right now in this time when we're trying to catalyze so much more housing. We cannot forget about affordability.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. Mike, you had put a question in the chat similar to Ada's, but I wanted to see if you wanted to elaborate on that or if you feel that got covered or not.
Yeah, it definitely got covered. It's obviously on all of our minds. So thanks for addressing it, Commissioner.
Thank you.
A follow-up to that, and we've long talked about solutions to how the public sector contracts with nonprofits, and what we hear consistently is the money isn't there, which we can understand. We see the budgets. But it seems that an idea that's generating some interest would actually be to kind of right size the contracts to the actual cost of doing business, the way that the public sector, and there's, as you know, conversations at the state that came out of some legislation last year about that. The way that the state and the public sector contracts for other services is different. Well, they'll actually, they'll mold those to what actual market costs are. It doesn't work that way, as you know, in our industry. It's here's an amount of money you have, here's the expected outputs and outcomes. We do the math, realize that we can only pay folks who are actually doing that work on the front line well below the housing wage that just continues to go up. And maybe that might pay for some of the overhead of the organization or none at all. For example, client assistance is a great thing. That's support from the public sector to help people and families pay the rent and that sort of thing. Tough to administer, often doesn't come with any personnel costs associated with it. So this idea of right sizing or rebasing contracts is something that's arisen. We'll need real support for that, and hopeful that those are the kind of conversations we can start to shift to. So I guess I'm asking a question, but just curious about your thoughts, Commissioner, on solutions such as that.
Well, I don't know those particular ideas specifically. This is the first time I've heard it, but I'm very intrigued. And I think what you can definitely count on from me is that I know these issues very well and have felt the pain of not having or probably in just about every kind of scenario that you've outlined, myself as a nonprofit director, sometimes biting your nails, and so I'm very interested in exploring innovations and learning about what you just talked about. And I know exactly what you're talking about getting program funds, but yet you don't get staffing funds to it. I fully understand. We can do this better, and I've never quite understood why the differences in approach exist in different industries, but it's very easy to see, the real life impacts on the sector, and why it's no surprise why we're facing shortages in this sector and at a time that we need it most. So absolutely something has to change. And so I think really having the ability to have those lateral conversations also, so that it's a regional approach rather than just, one entity approach, but that it doesn't really impact the other jurisdictions. I think that's going to be key as well, because as you know, a lot of the contracts that that providers get are sometimes across different jurisdictions for similar services. So and sometimes you have to braid those resources together to hold on to staff, or to employ full staff at a salary that is befitting and honoring of that work. So I guess that's just a long way of saying yes, I would love to dive in to this with you.
We'll appreciate that openness. It's been a tough conversation to have with elected officials, so we appreciate that. Well, we have just a couple minutes left, and there's still time to ask your question. But I'd like to, Andy, you've got your hand up, so please jump in.
Yeah, well, I want to leave time for Commissioner Rubio to close as well, but I guess my question is really about I feel like we're at this inflection point in how we respond to homelessness in our community. And 5 years ago, working on this issue, we were a housing first jurisdiction. Along with a lot of East and West Coast cities, Portland has moved toward or back to the strategy of criminalizing homelessness in the wake of the Grants Pass case. And clearly there are, candidates in the mayoral race who are pretty much running on a platform of, I think one of them referred to himself as the enforcement mayor, about enforcing camping bans. And the county's now looking at adding camping bans. those of us who are doing this work know that there's little or no success to come from those strategies. They disproportionately harm Black and brown folks. We also understand the public is completely frustrated that we can't seem to get movement on this issue. And I think this reactionary approach is coming out of that frustration. So I understand it, understand why it's become part of politics. Just wondering if you could speak to that. If you were mayor, you would have oversight of the Portland Police Bureau and how you would see deploying the Portland Police Bureau and other resources within the city when it comes to unsheltered homelessness.
Thanks for the question. My opinion on this is, if we can really get to the root issues and find that common ground on how the city and the county work together, and then how we together advocate with the state to get funding for things that we need, and that we can put pressure on the state also to get their systems strong and well fund, all the other support kind of systems that are outside of the jurisdiction of the city and the county. I feel like that is where our core issue really lies. And we will see then the ripple effects of taking place, where the wheels will turn in the direction that they need to go. I believe this is misplaced fear, and this is very these are systemic issues. These are not personal failings of vulnerable people. And I think that is something that is getting very exploited at the moment. And it's not who we are as a city. And I actually am hoping that this perspective is temporal, that we will see once, my hope is that, as we find that common ground, as our systems get stronger and built out, as we have the courage to lean in to the issue and put the real issue on the table, and let go of dancing around the issue. And as jurisdictions, part of having trust and respect for each other means putting truth and accountability on the table too. Then that's okay. That's a positive tension we can have. We need to have that. And so if we can continue to do that and actually build out those systems, there won't be a need to exploit or scapegoat in that way. Then police can hopefully go do the calls that they're meant to do, that we would have, a Portland street response that's fully capacitated for all parts of the city 24 hours. And, we're not pointing these fingers saying that, they're not enough this or not enough that. We just don't have enough capacity in general. Let's build out the capacity where we need to. If this is really the priority, then let's build out that capacity. The problem is there's a mismatch, in my opinion, of us saying it's a priority, but then not really building out the capacity in the right places. So maybe I'm an optimist, but it just feels so clear to me, like what needs to happen, and we just need the political will to get there, and the way to explain it and bring the community and public along, so they understand at each step what's happening, how something's different, and sharing those success stories along the way. I don't think as a city, and I'm speaking for the city, we do a very horrible job about that. We don't often speak with one voice as a city. It is sporadic. People don't know what's going on. And when people don't hear anything from us, big assumptions are made that, nothing's happening, while there might be stuff happening under the hood, but we're just not really great at that communication. And I would dare say other governments aren't as well. And it's led to this big issue and this cynicism around trust in government right now. And we are paying the price for that. And that is because we're not good at it. So things need to change. And that is something that I would really commit to doing. And we've talked about this a lot internally about how we would communicate often, even if there's nothing going on, say that just so that people can understand and have faith and start to build more fidelity in their government, and that they know people are working on their behalf, not just when things are going wrong.
Well, This has been some really, I think, important conversation about topics that matter. Alas, we're out of time. Thanks, RJ, for allowing us to skip your last question. Maybe we can get that answered for you offline. Great question, though. It's a little bit after 1. Commissioner Rubio, thank you for joining us today. Thanks to everyone else who took an hour out of their day. Really appreciate it. I think we could probably talk for another hour. This has been a great conversation, super smart and focused, I think, on the issues that matter the most to us. And so we have a few more in our series of Meet the Candidates scheduled, I think through the end of the year, end of the month, because election day is coming right up. Ultimately, we hope this series of Meet the Candidates, which we've produced in partnership with several of our sister nonprofits, has been helpful to you. It is a new year. We have many candidates and many issues, and we're in particular wanted to move forward some of the issues most near and dear to nonprofit organizations like Impact Northwest. So, Commissioner, thank you again, and thanks to everyone else, and best wishes.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.